Claim: the standard deviation of pulse rates of adult males is more than 10 beats per minute. For a random sample of 131 adult males, the pulse rates have a standard deviation of 10.8 beats per minute. Find the value of the test statistic. Okay, so here are our possibilities for our test statistic formulas: proportion, mean, and then the standard deviation or variance. Now let's take a look at the claim here. So the claim is telling us the following. The claim is saying that the standard deviation of pulse rates of adult males is more than 10 beats per minute. So let's go ahead and first identify that. So we want to first find the claim and the opposite of the claim. Okay, now the claim is saying that we have the standard deviation. So the standard deviation represents sigma, and it says more than 10 beats per minute. So that means it's going to be greater than 10. And therefore the opposite of the claim would then be less than or equal to 10. So what that's going to tell us is the following. It's going to give us the null and the alternative hypothesis. Now remember, the null hypothesis is always going to have the equality sign. So therefore the opposite is what's going to be applied to the null. So we would say that the null is going to have the standard deviation, which is equal to 10. And therefore the claim is going to go with the alternative hypothesis. So we would say that the population standard deviation is going to be greater than 10. Okay. Now, since we're dealing with the standard deviation, that means that we are looking for this test statistic, okay, and then this is the formula that we will be using for that test statistic. So let's go down here and then use this formula for step 2, okay. So for step 2, we need to figure out the information for this formula. So the first thing we're going to look for is n. So what does n represent? Well, n is the sample size, and the sample is 131. Okay, and then we need to figure out what is the sample standard deviation. So for that random sample, it says that we have a sample standard deviation of 10.8 beats per minute. Okay. And then what is the population standard deviation? Well, we know that that's going to come from the null hypothesis, and therefore that is equal to 10. And now what we can do is we can plug in to find the test statistic. So we know that n is 131 minus 1 times the sample standard deviation of 10.8 squared over the population standard deviation squared. So, and then they want us to round our answer to 2 decimal places. So let's go ahead and do that. So in our numerator, we know that we have parentheses 131 minus 1, and then times 10.8 squared. Then we're going to take that number and then divide it by 10 squared, and that gives us this result. Okay, and now, like it said, they want us to round that to 2 decimal places. So the chi-squared test statistic is going to be 151.63. So let's go ahead and put that in here. 151.63. Check our result, and there is our answer.